Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the service of worship at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Tucson. My name is Jamelia Omar, and I'm serving as the sabbatical leave minister, while our settled minister, Reverend Bethany Russell Lowe, is probably on sabbatical. I think that's why I got the title. Our community is as diverse as the blooms of the Sonoran Desert. Whoever you are, wherever you have been, and whoever you are becoming, you are welcome here today. Our requirement to wear masks in worship and in religious education has been lifted. You are, of course, welcome to wear a mask if you would prefer, but it is not required. If you are feeling sick, we do ask that you stay home. If you are joining us for in-person activities, we hope that you are vaccinated. And as always, we welcome our friends who are joining us on the live stream. I extend a special welcome to visitors and invite you to fill out a guest information card, which will also be posted in the YouTube chat now. There are clipboards and yellow paper at the back, and you're welcome to stick around and talk to any of us after service. We will meet right here for social hour, magically transformed, and we would invite you, if you're willing and able, there's two, and also these back doors to Holland Hall are still open, where there's other restrooms as per usual in there. And I would like today to give a big shout out of gratitude for our safety team, who has been meeting regularly and is working on developing new policies and procedures to think about the safety of our campus. They are meeting again June 9th and would welcome anybody who would like to join them in thinking through those things at 10:30 a.m. And if you are on our safety team, we've got Carolyn Valdez, Ken Ash is here, Barbarica, Wendy Weeks. So ask one of them and they will give you information about our safety team. We will start today by welcoming one another to this space. So in a minute when I say go, I want you to invite you to turn to a neighbor, maybe somebody you didn't have breakfast with today, and tell them about your hobbies. Make sure you tell them your name, but also tell them what your hobbies are. And if you're joining us online, feel free to put those in the chat. Talk about hobbies today. If you are a dreamer, come in. If you are a dreamer, a wisher, a liar, a hoper, a prayer, a magic bean buyer. If you're a pretender, come sit by my fire, for we have some flax golden tales to spin. Come in, come in.
Thank you for the beautiful. Would you join me in Words for Chalice Lighting, written by Kimberly and Tomzak Carlson? Recognizing the beauty around us and with, I'm going to wait so you can join me. Hang on. There we go. Okay, together. Recognizing the beauty around us and within us, in voice and spirit, we gather to light our chalice. May we savor the beauty of our abundance and diversity, one another and our earth. May we remember to inhale the lushness in life, knowing that we are a people of beauty. And now, if you have a chalice at home, would you light it as we light our chalice here in Holland? We're not in Holland. The team will laugh at me because I keep calling it the wrong name. And now, would you join in and rise in body or spirit and join in singing hymn 299, Make Channels for the Streams of Love. You want an introduction?
Make channels for the streams of love where they may brightly run, and love as overflowing streams to fill them everyone. But if at any time we see such channels to provide, the very fount of love for us will soon be parched and dried. For we must share if we would keep this gift all else above. We cease to give, we cease to have, such is the law of love.
I have a story for us this morning, and you have a very, very, very critically important part. Are you ready? Okay. Your line is, and then what? Try it. And then what? You got it. And then what? That's all you have to do. And I will point at you when it's your turn, okay? Okay. So, once upon a time, this is a once upon a time story, there was an investment banker. He lived in New York City and was phenomenally successful by some people's standards. He had a ton of money. His life was busy, noisy, stressful. He was always on the go, always on the go. I'm glad you asked. So once a year, this investment banker would take a trip down to some other place that had a beach and an island and a gentle wave that would rock him to sleep at night. And he would allow himself for 2 weeks out of the year to go and feel rejuvenated. One day, he was standing on the pier looking out at the sea, and he noticed a small fishing boat coming into the dock. He thought this was a little strange because it was the middle of the day. It was lunchtime. And so he stood there until the boat came in, and he said to the fisherman, waved hello. Curiosity got the better of him. He went over to talk to the fisherman. We're going to call him a fisherman. Glad you asked. Looking into the boat, he saw the fisherman had several large yellowfin tuna, some fish that he catches, and he asked the fisherman, "How long does it take you to catch those fish?" The fisherman replied, "It's not very long." The investment banker said, "Is there something wrong with your boat?" And the fisherman says, "No, I've had this boat for 13 years, never had a problem with it." And the investment banker says, "Well, then why did you not stay out there longer and catch more fish?" Smiling, The fisherman says, well, this here is plenty for my family. We can eat some fish. We can give some to our neighbors. We can trade some for some goods we need. And the investment banker says, well, it's not even lunchtime. Why don't you stay out there longer? What do you do with the rest of your time? Okay? The fisherman replies, well, in the morning, the fisherman says, I like to sleep late. I wake up a little bit to fish for part of the morning, mostly just for pleasure and fun, and so we have some protein on our table. In the afternoon, I go home and I play with my children, I have a siesta with my wife. In the evenings, I have dinner with my family, and then when my children are sleeping, I stroll into the village and I play guitar till late in the night with my comrades there. The American scoffed. I'm a Harvard MBA, I can help you. The fisherman was skeptical, but said, okay, tell me how. You should fish longer into the day. First of all, you can catch more fish late into the afternoon. You can come home with your boat full. This way, you'll get more fish, you'll make more money, and you can buy a bigger boat. And with a bigger boat, you can catch even more fish and make more money and sell it to the village down the street. And the fisherman inquired, oh, we're just getting started, says this Harvard MBA, right? With 2 boats, you'll catch even more fish. You can make even more money. And before you know it, you have a whole fleet of boats for every person in this village to work for you and catch more fish. And the fisherman said, oh, before too long, you will cut out the middleman, sell your fish direct to a cannery, and make even more money. Your fleet of boat continues to expand. You can build your own cannery, and before you know it, you'll be able to leave this small, tiny little village and move to a really big metropolitan city and manage your expanding enterprise. Before too long, you can begin to ship your fish to different parts of the world. Asia, the Americas, Antarctica, who knows? They need fish all over. Open a distribution plant, ship your fish to Europe. And the fisherman inquired. The businessman continued, then your business will be one of the great ventures in industry. You can move to New York City and manage your empire at the epicenter of the world business market. And the fisherman says, how long will this take? 20, maybe 30 years, says the investment banker. And the fisherman says, this is when the investment banker's eyes lit up like a Christmas tree. This is the best part, he said. When the time is right, you can go down to Wall Street, you can list your business as offer it as an IPO, make millions and millions of dollars. Millions, says the fisherman. More money than you could have dreamed of in your lifetime, says the investment banker. And the fisherman says, American did not know what to say. He had reached his climax. He was stumped. But then the thought crossed his mind and triggered an idea. And once more he said, well, then you could move to a small coastal village. You could sleep late. You could fish just for the pleasure of fishing. In the afternoons, you could take a siesta with your wife. And in the evenings, have dinner with your family. And then stroll into the village and play music all night long with your friends. So I'm going to ask you later, which character in this story do you identify with? More to come.
This strong. It can hold our pain and our joy, our love and our anger. Our shared bowl, which we use for joys and sorrows each week, is strong enough to hold the big rocks, our collective celebrations and mournings, and also the smaller stones that will be added to signify our individual joys and sorrows. Let us remember the desert people who came first in this place. We honor the Hohokam, the Yavapai, the Tohono O'odham, the Yaqui, and the people who no longer exist as tribal entities here in Arizona. We who live in the desert know that water is a life-sustaining resource. Let's remember those who are walking through our desert right now without access to water. We pour water from a plastic jug, like the ones our ministry partner, No More Deaths, sets out to assure greater access to water in the desert. If you have a joy or sorrow to share, I invite you to go to menti.com and put in the code 43277595. If any of you here in the sanctuary wish to put your thoughts up on Menti, I can help you do that. I'll be right here. If you're here in person, I invite you to come up and to the table and create ripples of hope by putting a stone into the water to symbolize your joy or sorrow. For those of you who do choose to come up, please come up the center aisle and then return to your seat via the outside aisles. Submitted through our Menti, prayers for LGBTQ community in Uganda facing terrible new oppressive bias. Days are hard, but we still smile at the rainbows. And I'll add some stones now to our bowl for those joys and sorrows that remain unspoken. Would you join me in a moment of meditation or prayer or reflection, whatever's your style, as I share these words by Stephen Levine. It's called If Prayer Would Do It. If prayer would do it, I'd pray. If reading esteemed thinkers would do it, I'd be halfway through the patriarchs. If discourse would do it, I'd be sitting with His Holiness every moment He was free. If contemplation would do it, I'd have translated the periodic table to hermit poems, converting matter to spirit. If even fighting would do it, I'd already be a black belt. If anything other than love could do it, I'd have done it already and left the hardest for last. And now, will you rise in body or spirit and join in singing hymn number 6, Just as Long as I Have Breath.
Just as long as I have breath, I must answer yes to life. Though with pain I make my way, verses.
Our words for our offering today come from the Reverend Dr. Victoria Weinstein. We say in our church that the offering is a sacrament of the free church. What we mean by that is that we believe it is a blessing to be able to govern and support our religious community ourselves, to make possible by our generosity everything we dream of and do to live out our shared values. Every week, we lift up the spiritual value of generosity by taking an offering for the ministries of the church. Our plate, then, as it is passed among us, becomes filled with the evidence of that generosity. It is our harvest, gathered in every week for what most nourishes us. Now an offering will be collected to support the life and work of our congregation. If you are joining us on live stream, you can send a check to the office, give online at uuctucson.org/donate, or text 833-361-5796. If you are here in person, the ushers will come around now with the offering baskets to collect your donations. The morning offering will be most gratefully received.
So you remember the story from a few minutes ago? I told you there was an assignment. Tell your neighbor, which do you identify with and why? 1 minute, go. Are you the investment banker or the fisherman? Okay, if you haven't gotten to share with somebody, find them at social hour and feel free to continue this raucous conversation. So today's sermon is titled, Amateur is Not a Four-Letter Word. Most of us know that phrase, four-letter word. It usually indicates a swear word or something unpleasant, right? So four-letter word. The word amateur, right? When I was looking up the word amateur, there's one I didn't know. I was so excited to find a new word. Abecedarian. Has anybody heard this word? Abecedarian, like 17th century. As a person who is learning the letters of the alphabet, a beginner in any field of learning, it sounds like a made-up word, but it is not. Do you have other synonyms for amateur? Shout them out. Unpaid. Rookie. Newbie. Beginner. Hobbyist. Novice.
You do it for love.
Do it for love. Learner. Say it again. Dilettante. I like that word a lot. I also like tinkerer. Anybody a tinkerer? Yeah? So I want to give a couple of caveats before we get any further, because there are people that are going to say, but Jamili, be like, I know. So let me give you those caveats up front. First, when we talk about amateur, we're not talking about people who have to monetize their work or choose to be in professions that are also passion work, right? We might think of people that we know who love the work that they do and choose to professionalize it. We're not talking about them. We're not talking about people who want to start a side hustle or want to start something to move towards a career that's more fulfilling, like going back to school. We're not talking about creating things and selling them like on Etsy because we want to. We're not talking about work that should be paid. For example, unpaid internships or performing for free for exposure. Things that should be paid, not talking about those things. Right? We really are talking about being an amateur at something. So the hobbies you listed earlier this morning might be one of those things. An amateur is just a person who engages in an activity for pastime rather than professionally or for monetary gain. Good? Got our definitions? So why do we talk about amateur? Did I want to talk about being an amateur in a month on creativity? Because our new theme this month is creativity, and we'll be hearing from several of us on this topic over the month. So I'm going to tell you a story just a way of answering that question. It's a pretty silly story, but I want to share this because when I think about being an amateur, this is what I think about in my life. So you know that when I was in kindergarten to 12th grade, I was a Girl Scout, right? I'm a bleed green Girl Scout. And I was deep in the 3 C's, camp, crafts, and cookies. One summer, I was at camp, and I learned a new craft called friendship bracelets. Friendship bracelets, they are yarn or thread or string of some kind that you tie a bazillion knots, and you get a bracelet that you can give to your bestie. And we're best friends. They were at the height of fashion in the 90s. So I was in, 5th or 6th grade, learned this brand new craft, and I thought to myself, I'm going to make one for everybody I know. Better yet, I'm going to make extras and sell them. Wait a minute, even better, I'm going to take orders and make them and sell them. Guess how far I got? I took the orders, and I was done. I think that summer I finished no friendship bracelets that summer. Part of that could be because I was in 5th grade. Part of that was probably because of the added pressure of monetizing this thing that I loved doing. So monetization is one aspect that I want to think about. The other aspect is when we set our sights on professionalization, when we set our sights on being the best, the fastest, the strongest. I could have been the best friendship bracelet maker ever. Probably not. There's a story that was just in the news this week. A man named Martinus Evans. He would self-identify as a fat African-American man. He went to his doctor, and his doctor said, Martinus, you got to lose weight. Lose weight, or you're not going to be with us very much longer. And so he said, I can do that. And he took up running. Now, his story is that he set his goal to run a marathon, which is a high and mighty goal. He said, I do not ever need to win a marathon. I just need to finish a marathon. And he has. In the last 10 years, he's run 100 races. He's competed in 8 marathons. You know how many he's won? 0. Right? He does it because he has joy in moving his body and running in this particular way. Okay, so here's your cue. You didn't know that was going to come back. And then what? The question is, are we okay being the last? Are we okay not monetizing our hobbies, and how do we get there? For many of us, when we do monetize or we try to professionalize or try to be the best, we lose our motivation. And that's a shame because the benefits of hobbies are widely recognized. The American Psychological Association, the AARP, there are many, many organizations that tell us how important hobbies are. And there was one study that came out of China that affirms what we know in long working hours could have a significantly negative impact on workers' psychological health. Importantly, having hobbies in their daily lives might help to mitigate the adverse effects of long working hours on depression and mental well-being. So hobbies are important. And it's not just for those of us that are still in the workforce, right? I know a lot of us in this room who are retirees are actually busier now than we were when we were in the workforce. My question is, are you living in a way that leads to greater happiness? Are you on the treadmill of monetization, professionalization, and selling your time for approval? We work all our lives to stop working, like the investment banker in that story, and so some of us don't get to that point where we're enjoying our retirement. The American Psychological Association that I mentioned before talks about how important it is to have a plan for this. We have to plan for our retirement, that we keep engaging in activities, hobbies, volunteering, service, that keep us engaged and keep bringing meaning to our life. So how do we mitigate when we do things like retire and we have this big joy of being retired and not being in the work world, and then we crash and we find that we don't have that meaning and those connections in our life anymore? One answer, again, is altruism. They talk about volunteering and serving, maybe serving at church is a way we do that, and that itself can become burdensome if we're doing it for reasons that don't feed our soul and help us find our own spark. So here's the kicker. Doing something we do because we should do it, or because working is what I do, working is my identity, doesn't bring us well-being necessarily. And especially volunteering to prove that we still have value in the world when our value is determined by our productivity is not going to bring us that well-being, right? So we can take apart the volunteering or the service or the activity we're doing from our self-worth and our value in the world. I've been thinking about this for weeks, right? Because I knew the sermon was coming, and I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who's a stay-at-home dad. His kids are growing up, and so he's starting to find his place is a little less certain in the world. He knew while they were young that he was needed, and he was important to them. And now that they're getting a little bigger and a little more independent, he's not sure. And what was my first response to him? Why don't you think about a job? And I've been preparing for this service, and I'm like, no, that's not the answer. Why don't you look for meaning? Look for a way that you can contribute to your life and find meaning in it. So how did we get here to this social situation where our value is predicated on what we contribute and what's monetized? I want to read a lengthy excerpt from a 1999 book by Wayne Mueller titled Sabbath: Finding Rest, Renewal, and Delight in Our Busy Lives. So he has one chapter called Why Time is Not Money. We've heard that phrase, your time is money. He says, why time is not money. And here's what he writes. During World War II, Britain was desperate to find a way to keep track of the resources necessary to fight the war. Economists developed a method whereby they could record and combine the value of all the goods and services bought and sold each year and use this figure to calculate the overall wealth of the nation. They developed the GDP, the gross domestic product. When the war was finally over, the newly formed United Nations decided that this was a good system and it would be a useful tool for understanding and comparing the relative wealth of other nations of the world. If the number of goods and services bought and sold increased, it would indicate a solid, robust economy. If the goods decreased, maybe a failing economy. An expanding economy was seen as good and necessary for the health and survival of the country. A declining economy was an alarming indicator that the nation's well-being was in danger. So this was at the end of the war, and the UN urged members to adopt this method as the worldwide standard, and today we still use the GDP as our judge of how well countries are doing or not doing. And Mueller says, at first glance, this method makes sense. We're accounting, we're tabulating, we're keeping track of things. However, This method quickly devolves into violence and oppression when it is applied. For when wealth is measured only in terms of good and services bought and sold, only those actions involving money are counted or seen as useful. Anyone done with time, anyone not selling their time is perceived as useless. And Mueller gives us two examples. One of a woman that gets up every morning, she gets her kids ready, gets them off to school. She spends the morning working in her garden. In the afternoon, she goes around to her neighbors and checks in on them and see how they are doing. And then in the evening, she cooks and clothes her kids, puts them to bed, maybe has a quiet moment with her partner. As measured by the GDP, this woman's work is useless. She is a drain on the national economy. Her cousin, on the other hand, who's been fortunate enough to join the military and become a soldier and serve his country, goes and bombs a village out in another country, adds to the GDP. Why? Because he has used resources through the military, he has increased aid to that country that now needs to revitalize their own community. He has provided immense service. And Mueller writes that by murdering innocents, our young pilot has done a very good thing. He has provided an enthusiastic boost to the economy. And we look at it in those stark terms, we start to question our own value on our own limits of productivity. In short, Mueller concludes, we have converted destruction into an economic good, but anything that grows without money changing hands, parents who care for their children, people who voluntarily care for the sick and dying, the homeless, people who pray or meditate or walk in the woods, these at best have no value. At worst, they take away precious time and energy that could be used to grow the GDP. Our question, and then what? What do we do with that, right? How do we take ourselves out of that system of exchange? How do we value the work that is not for money? I think our first answer is to remember who you are. You are the sparkle in the eye of the divine. Some of our traditions say that you are a child of God. Song of Solomon sings, "You are altogether beautiful, my love. There is no flaw in you." As we say here, you are whole and holy just as you are, not for what you produce or how you contribute, but because you are you. Then, once you've remembered your inherent worth, try to remember what makes you come alive. What makes you spark inside? And when can you do that? What do you do out of pure joy? What sparks when you don't have to monetize or professionalize? What sparks when you don't have to study to get better or answer a test? What sparks when you don't have to ever master it or become the process of doing is more important than the perceived perfection of the product? And maybe you don't call them hobbies. Maybe you call them something else. Maybe you don't know what they are yet. Go and remember. What if we spent our time trying to find them and bring them into this world screaming and wailing like newborn babies? Maybe we think small. We can think of mini hobbies, little mini things that we can take just a few minutes, 10 minutes or 15 minutes out of our day. Maybe we think of midi hobbies. Midi hobbies. That's a hard one to say. Midi hobbies that take a little bit more time, maybe involve a few more people, maybe get us out into the world. What would you do if you had a maxi hobby? What would you do if you had the 2 weeks to do whatever you wanted? If you had all the people and all the resources to do it? What sparks for you? And where does service to our church fit in there? Does that bring you spark? And if it does, there are mini, and maxi ways you can get involved with us here too, right? We have activities that take 10 minutes and would love for you to participate in. So I want to close out with a poem that's most likely not Hafiz, because that's complicated, but it's beautiful, and I wanted to share it anyways. And it says, "I sometimes forget that I was created for joy. My mind is too busy, my heart is too heavy for me to remember that I have been called to dance the sacred dance of life. I was created to smile, to love, to be lifted up, and to lift up others. O sacred one, untangle my feet from all that ensnares. Free my soul that we might dance and that our dancing might be contagious. Friends, I wish you go in peace, go with joy, go find your spark, and resist commodification. As you're willing and able, please rise as we sing Wake Now My Senses.
Hopefully we have the words up. Wake now my senses and hear the earth call. Feel the deep power of being in awe. Keep with the web of creation your vow, giving, receiving as love shows us how. Wake now my reason, reach out for the new. Join with each pilgrim who quest for the true. Honor the beauty and wisdom of time. Suffer thy limit and praise the sublime. Is your neighbor, both stranger and friend, praying and striving their hardship to end?
Please join me in our words of chalice extinguishing. The chalice is now extinguished, but its light lives on in the minds and hearts and souls of each one of you. With you as you leave this place and share it, with those you know, with those you love, and most especially with those you have not. Thank you, Bert.